So last week we talked about becoming stagnant in your career and how you can grow within the next 12 months within your career, how you can 10 times your career. In podcast number 11, we're going to talk about how you can become less stagnant and more effective within your workplace, how you can 10 times your effectiveness at work. So there's two parts to this. We're going to start with part one. The first part of that is start with the foundations. So you being effective at work relates back to your mind, your body. If you're spiritual, the spiritual connection you have. So those are the most critical things that are holding you back from being more effective at work. Not the people around you. It's you holding yourself back at being effective. So start with the foundations of your body, mind. Those are the solid ones. One thing to consider, if you're spiritual, are you putting in the commitment at home to further your spiritual walk? Food is critical. You're fueling your body. If you're eating junk food, you're not eating consistently, you're overeating. Your hormones, I'm not a doctor, but I just know when I'm eating properly, when I'm eating whole foods, when I'm not eating a bunch of junk, my mind is more clear and I'm more effective. I'm not anxious. I'm not just going in circles, constantly, afraid to do things, to, have anxiety. So it's really important that you're feeding your body with whole foods and you're eating consistently and you're not overeating. As well, sleep. Are you getting enough sleep? If you're not getting enough, everybody's got these watches, Google or whatever. They track and they tell you how well you're doing from perspective of your sleeping pattern. So are you sleeping good? If you're not, start focusing on that, figuring out what are some things you can do to make sure that you're sleeping better. Water intake, again, we're talking about the foundations right now. The effectiveness at work is about the foundations of your body and mind. So are you drinking enough water? Consistently drink water throughout the day. Make sure you're getting enough so that your cells can take in food, your cells can move out food. Are you having too much alcohol, coffee? Is that causing issues with your hormones and you're not stable? You're not patient at work? You're anxious to do things, therefore you're not always thinking straight. That's critical. And exercise. Doing a bit of exercise, if you're not doing anything at all, doing a bit of it is better than nothing. So if you're currently not doing anything, you're going home and you're sitting on the couch, instead of doing that, why don't you go for a 20-minute walk or whatever it is? Start doing a little bit of exercise. Even in the morning, you can wake up, you get out of bed, it's difficult. Start doing 20 push-ups. Forget about the complexity of exercise. Start doing 20 push-ups a day. Maybe you can only do 2 right now. Maybe you can do them with bad form, only 2. Whatever it is, start somewhere and improve what you're doing. The next thing is, so now that we've got your mind, your body, we've got you set up for success, the next thing is, if you're stagnant and you're not effective, you likely have a ton of backlog at work, a backlog within your life. So as an example, let's talk about your life. If you're married, perhaps you've got all these projects that your spouse, whether husband or wife, wants you to do, and you just keep putting them off because maybe you're a procrastinator. Start focusing on figuring out what are all those things at home, outside of work, that need to get completed. Maybe you haven't been paying some bills. Start focusing on cleaning up the backlog. Get rid of all that stuff so you're not thinking about that, going to bed and creating stress for yourself. Get rid of the backlog at home and at work. You probably got, maybe you got paper all over the place, all these different projects you've got to complete, and you keep postponing these actions and stuff. Write everything down. Maybe there's 100 things you need to do. Write it down. Put it on your table. Start getting those things off one by one. Highlight each one whenever you finish. You're going to feel great when you finish those things. Maybe you're not going to get all 100 done, but maybe you're going to get 50 done because you wrote it down, you put it in front of your face. You got to work on first your body, getting it optimal. Then you got to work on the backlog at home and in work. Those are critical things. You got to organize your life and make sure you're healthy. Once these foundational things have been fixed, then we go on to the next step. And again, for any of those things I've just talked about, I have experience. I'm not a doctor, but I have a lot of experience on doing these types of things. If you need help, if you need to be coached, if you don't have motivation and you want somebody to coach you along this process and basically hold you accountable, reach out to me. Send me an email, check my channel. There's an email, I think it's Robin Landry Work Life. Just check what that is. If you can't find that, then leave a note in the comments and then I'll reach out with you. The second part, once you've dealt with the foundation, now you need to, we're talking about effectiveness at work. Now you need to identify those things which are important to your group's performance. So if you manage a company or you manage a department or you manage a team, what are those things that are important to your performance? What are those metrics, goals, KPIs, things, maybe the things that you always get harassed on at work, or just your actual goals, your department's goals or your personal goals. Write those things down on a piece of paper. Put it in Microsoft Word or Google Docs, print it out, put it on the table. Maybe have put in a grid form where you've got those things on the left, and then you've got 5 columns, and you can check off that you've reviewed each one of those every single day. So if let's say there's 10 things you need to review, then you're going to have 10 rows of writing those 10 things, and then you're going to have 5 columns to represent Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. And now what I want you to do is I want you to go and review those things every single day. Maybe it's 2-minute review, maybe it's 1 minute, maybe it's 30 minutes. And check off when you do those. Get into a habit of reviewing those things that are important to your performance or your team's performance. And anything where there's an underperforming item where it's consistently underperforming, now you need to write up what are some small things or a small thing that you could do to help move that underperforming area closer in the right direction. So that's the second thing. You need to look at those underperforming items and see what's a micro habit. There's a lot of discussion about Atomic Habits, the book, and micro habits, and how those small things have a compounding effect, and they will give you 30 plus return at the end of the year. So it's really critical you have some sort of action plan on those underperforming. Otherwise, you're just going to go backwards. Now, at the end of the week, review how those micro habits, those atomic habits, those small habits impacted the performance of that particular metric. Did they do anything? Did they have any effect? Do you need another week for it to come in to have an actual effect? If you're seeing that's not affecting, you need to change what you're doing. You can't just keep doing the same thing thinking that it's going to impact something. Now you need to modify, and you need to do this on a weekly basis. So you review your metrics at the end of the week. You see, okay, this action's not doing anything, so then you need to adjust that action. And then if you find another thing, if you find that you're doing other people's work, you need to start slightly pulling back on that. So we've talked about, in this podcast, this is the way that you're going to 10 times your effectiveness at work. We talked about foundation, your body, mind, and spirit. We talked about getting rid of the backlog. We talked about looking at your performance markers and starting to create micro habits around improving them, or improving one at a time. Now you need to start creating more time for yourself to sustain everything you've put in place. So there are going to be people within your organization that are going to send you emails with the expectation that they wash their hands of the issue. And what you need to do, you need to start managing and changing the behavior of people. Perhaps you've been in that position for 3 years and you need to start changing the behavior of the person. Well, you don't just want to go and say the next time they send an email asking for this, you say nope, not doing it. That's just going to create a lot of conflict between you and that person, and even perhaps even some boss gets involved and says you're supposed to do this, yada yada yada. So you don't want to do that. You want to perhaps, again, if it's not your responsibility but you've always been doing it, you want to maybe one of every 3 times, perhaps not actually respond to that email. If it's not critical and it's just something that somebody wants you to do, it's not critical to the business, maybe you're not going to respond once every 3 times and see what happens. And then maybe, you were not responding 30% of the time, now you move it up to 66. Now you're just not responding, and somehow the person is probably starting to do the task or the analyze this particular question or data on their own. So that's one way. Another way is when somebody, maybe within your own team, is asking you to do their work, you can bring them, say, hey, come on in, have a seat at my desk. I'll stand behind you. I'm going to show you how to analyze this data and how to come up with the actions or how to resolve these issues yourself. So you can start training people on how to fix their own issues. And perhaps once they get trained, maybe that was actually their preference. They wanted to do it themselves. Don't always assume that just because they're sending it over, that's a negative situation, that they're just lazy. Perhaps they just don't know how to do it. They don't know how to ask. So maybe you need to train them. So those are the key things in my mind on how you can become extremely effective at work. And once again, if you need coaching, if you need suggestions, or any help, you need somebody to coach you along to keep you accountable and help you develop some little simple plan, message me and we can connect, and I can help you along that route.